Hello, Saints and Sinners. Welcome. We're doing a video today using the Saint and Sinner palette. Oh, I didn't even realize. Hello and welcome. I'm Hannah, and today I wanted to throw it back a little bit, throw it back a lot bit to 2017 when Kat Von D, the brand, was the bee's knees, and every year people were like dying to see what the brand would release as their like holiday palette. And for most of the years, for me, I was interested in makeup, but I didn't have the funds to be buying like a new limited edition high-end eyeshadow palette every year. Maybe I could get one for Christmas, but by that time, the Kat Von D palette was already sold out. Like, I was out of luck. But one of the last years was 2017. That's when they came out with their Saint and Sinner palette. I got this. I was so excited about it. I remember I was in the store with some of my friends and they're like, "We've never seen you happier." And I'm like, ah. In case you've never seen her before, or even if you have, it's probably been a while. This is the palette. It's like a front open palette and it has like two little, I'm messing up this angle. It has two little like window door things going on, and it has all the shades here separated into Saint and Sinner colors, but they all share in common this kind of like a little bit of a desaturated, interesting color story. And I was all about it. I did so many looks with this, and it still just feels like such a cool thing that I have in my collection. We're gonna do a couple different things today, starting with seeing if I can dupe this palette out in my collection. I've wondered this for so long because these shades feel so unique to me, and I'm pretty sure there's some that I won't have in my collection, but it's always interesting to look around specifically for that and see if I do. And then after that, I'll be constructing this eye look where I have the Saint and Sinner palette on one eye, and I have my Indie Single Shadow version of the palette on the other eye. So here's your little sneak preview now. You can place your bets about what's on what eye. But yeah, we have a lot to get into, so let's switch over to my hands and construct the palette. The iconic Saint and Sinner palette, I really had to work to get it to like stand so nicely like this. I bent the little like, windows of it back so it wouldn't be reflecting light back at you. So I'm going to try to not touch that. We're going to recreate it in this Cheetah Tarte palette, and I want to try to arrange it as similarly to this as possible. This will fit 5 down, but this actually has 6 across, and I don't think I could fit 6 across in here, but we will try our best. I'm so excited to see how this turns out. I'm curious if it's going to end up like other palettes that I've duped, where I feel like I don't have anything similar in my collection, but then I realize that like I do, I've just never isolated them in the way that this palette does. Although there's definitely some shadows in here, I look at them and I'm like, there's no way I have this like weird peachy orange, like we'll just have to find something similar. Let's start looking around. I'm already noticing an interesting thing. I don't think I'm going to go in any particular order, but I'm looking at it right now. I'm seeing that Amen here is like a bone-colored matte, and then Baptism down here is like a very light pink matte. Like, they're pretty similar, it's just this one's more warm and this one's more cool. I think I do have a bone-colored matte that will fill in for Amen, but I don't think I have, actually I know I don't have a pink that light. But yeah, the bone-colored matte in my Inner Corner Shades palette, I have this one here. Not very exciting, but there's our first shadow. And then I'm looking at this shade up here. I think this has some pink to it. Huh. Yeah. Alright, for that one, I'm going to put in Celestial from the Shine by SD Glam Smitty collab. I've really been enjoying this for my inner corner, and that's already like a step up because I know I've tried to use that after getting a little bit more into iridescence, and I've been like, okay, like that's not it. So this palette is already giving me something that this palette couldn't. I have Divina shadows in here, as well as some mattes from Luxie and Divina. So we already talked about this one weird super light pink. That's the kind of shade I could consider changing that for a shimmer, because I do have light pink shimmers, but we already have this pink iridescent in here. So the other option is to go for the lightest pink that I have in a matte, even though it's not going to be the same tone. And in here, I have Meraki from Divina, and I have, is this Forever? Yeah, Forever from Luxie. Meraki is a little bit more grayed out, and I think I'm going to include this because I feel like it fits the vibe better. This orange Mesa from Luxie, that will definitely fit in for that orange. Oh, I'm gonna pull out Divina Cygnus to fill in for Rosary, but I think the Divina one is like a lot more pink, or at least like it shifts to more pink, but we'll stick with that for now. I'm going to do Divina Moonlit for Cathedral. Oh, and then for Relic, I have Divina Majesty. It's like a basic yellowy bronze, but a very nice one. And then I'm also going to pull out this other like basic Divina shimmer. This is Triton, and I could see it filling in for Sanctuary. Cleona Shadows. I don't see it. Actually, Heaven. What is this? It's kind of like a light pinkish, purplish shadow. You think, is this Bloodline or Opulent? Bloodline. Sorry for the focus, I have a lot going on. Bloodline is a lot deeper, but I do feel like it's the same vibe. Let's see Opulent also. Apparently they just reformulated this. I didn't, like, it's funny, some of the other shadows they reformulated, you're like, yeah, it needed to be reformulated. I feel like there's nothing wrong with this one. That seems like a better comparison. So yeah, I'm gonna pull out Opulent. Ooh, and also I was pointing out before how odd of a shade Sacred Heart is. I will override this if I see something better, but I feel like Trinket from Cleona is like a similarly odd shadow. Like there's definitely way more going on in Trinket, but like just color-wise, they're pretty similar. So I'm going to put Trinket in. And I'm already kind of feeling like a little bit of what I was saying before, that it's like a grouping of colors right now that I would never ever have put together, but I have them. Like, you know, and all you have to do is combine these shades you would never combine, and it starts turning into a palette that you feel like you don't have, you know? Okay, in here I have, I have ColourPop, I have some Depotted mattes, I have Adept, and I have Menagerie. And I'm actually seeing quite a bit in here that I think will work. For this like bright green Exodus, I have Electric from Menagerie. For this odd kind of like rusted rose, it's not a perfect match, but I have Pack Leader from Menagerie that I feel like is like a similarly odd kind of like faded red color. Man, I really wish this palette would fit 6 across. For Vestment, which looks like their version of like that blue-brown pigment, I have Ink Defense from Menagerie. And then for Martyr, I have Mane from Menagerie, kind of like a mustardy matte. I have my one black single shadow, which is this Depotted one from ColourPop. Oh, and for this purple, that might be a little bit more vibrant, but I have this Adept one that's also kind of like a bland, like a grungy purple. Oh, I also have this bone-colored matte here in like a larger pan than the one that I already put in. Maybe I'll do that one instead. Actually, no, maybe, I tend to like the larger pans, but I'm like, I already do have a smaller pan in here because of the black. So does it make a difference for like aesthetics? I'm sorry, I know it's far away. You know, I'll just leave it the smaller pan. We haven't even gotten into a lot of the more exciting brands, and this palette's already like almost filled up. Let's do a quick recap. I still need this shadow. I need an olive. I need this like light shimmery gray. I need this like mid-toned brown, this like very yellowy shimmery brown, a dark brown matte. It doesn't look matte, but I think I just have gotten some sparkles in it. I need this bright blue, and I need a purple matte. Here are my Terra Moons and my larger pan shadows. I feel like Milky Way would fit the vibe, but this shadow is definitely like ahead of its time. Sorry, I'm so backwards today. I'm just like pointing in all the wrong places if I'm looking at the screen. But yeah, Milky Way, I feel like the vibe would fit in, but the shadow doesn't, like, it's not represented here. I think I will pull out Chestnut to be this dark brown there. This is definitely a warmer brown. Okay, maybe I won't. I was thinking it'd be nice to be able to leave my like 40 perfect shadows intact, but I don't want to make sacrifices for the palette for that reason. So actually, maybe there's nothing that I need from here. I pulled out my Divina Fantasia palette because this is all like magnetic. And actually, this shadow would work too. Huh. Okay, let's do a little comparison. This is Matte from the Divina Fantasia palette. This is Trinket from Cleona. And this is the shade from the Saint and Sinner palette. You know, it is closer to the Divina shade. All right, Trinket has been overruled. I also brought out my Dead Roses palette. I feel like Ew, this is the one that I had all over my lid in that video where I swatched all these. I feel like Ew does almost fit the vibe of here also, but again, it's not directly represented. In here, I have some Shine by SD and some Pretties for Your Face. Actually, we'll talk more about Pretties for Your Face in a moment. I was tempted to do this one. I think this is Changeling from the M. Jones 5018 and Bizarre Volta collab, but Chalice is like much cooler. So I think I want to keep looking. The Twilight palette. So this is like a very light, grayish, like taupey matte with like a lot of sparkles in it. I don't have anything just like this shadow. It is like a very interesting shade, and I wouldn't mind having it. Well, I guess it's funny when it swatches out, it doesn't look very sparkly. But I have this one from ColourPop in here, which I think of as like my gray matte, even though it's also quite taupey. And I feel like that will make a fine substitution. Okay, yeah, remember a minute ago when I said more on Pretties for Your Face in a moment? I have 9 new Pretties for Your Face shades. I had ordered these, I think at the end of January, thinking that with Pretties for Your Face's turnaround time, I would do like an eye swatch video in March. And then they surprised me by coming very quickly, and I like wasn't ready to do an eye swatching video. So I was like, you know what? Some of the shadows that I ordered, I was looking for them to be like building blocks, and I wouldn't necessarily feature them in an eye swatching video anyway. So I decided to just start using them. And then Pretties for Your Face had another sale, so I ordered more shimmery shadows. When I get those, I'll be eye swatching those along with a couple very shimmery ones in here, and we'll talk more about the less shimmery ones at that time. So that's a little sneak preview for a video that will be within the next couple weeks. But I didn't want to ignore these today because I feel like they fit the vibe. And if they don't, then I just did this whole thing for nothing. I'm like looking at Cathedral compared to Moonlit, which I already pulled out for it. Moonlit is definitely a lot lighter. So I'm like, what about this one? I'll have to check the name in a second. Yeah, that one's much closer to Cathedral. Yeah, the 2 on the outside, definitely. The shadow is in for a treat. And then while I have this palette open, I'm looking at Wall of Ivy. These are the shadows that I talked about in, was it last week's video or 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago's video, where I randomly selected some shades and I talked about whether or not I would repurchase them. So I stuck those in here in the meantime before I put them away. But I'm wondering if Wall of Ivy will make a good substitution for the olive in there. All right, their olive is a lot more dingy. I'm expecting some of my shadows to be better quality, so I'm not like opposed to like an upgrade, but I probably have a Luxie shadow that's much more similar in color. You ever just lose your phone when you're sitting in one spot? Like I looked at it a couple of minutes ago. I haven't gotten up and I have no idea where it is. It's probably just under one of these things, but, or it's like on camera and it's embarrassing that I'm talking about this, but nope, no idea. Lost it. Gone forever. Okay. Oh, perfect. All right. The Sydney Grace one is popping out to be the replacement for Ministry. Great. I really wasn't sure where that one like was gonna come from because I don't have that many like vibrant, true deep blues like that. This one's depotted from one of the Temptalia palettes. By the way, I'm gonna swatch out Revelation and Chalice so we can do some comparisons. So that's Revelation and Chalice. And this is Tiramisu from Dandelions. That's quite a bit more like reddish. And then let's see about this Glaminatrix shade. That's quite a bit lighter and warmer. Oh, this is the shadow that I wanted for Exorcism. Yeah, that's Burlesque from Glaminatrix. I'm trying to ignore the phone thing, but I am going a little crazy about it. But it's fine. I don't need it. It's fine. Here is my perfect 40 pan palette along with some others that I need to either find homes for or put away. And yeah, I'm just gonna take out ColourPop Noche. This is just like, you know, a good regular deep brown that will fill in for that guy. So then the bottom two rows are complete. Still need, oh, I wiped the swatches off my hand. I still need this one and I still need this one and that one. I'm going to re-swatch these. And I'm wondering about Moby from Pretty Sphere Face. That's in this perfect 40 pan palette. Although Moby, I'm pretty sure it's going to come up a lot more like yellowy than either of these. Yeah, I don't think that works for either of them. And then Luxie is our final untapped palette. So let's see. Okay, yeah, for this pink one up here, I'm going to pull in Pixie Dust. I feel like it's a similar formula. They're both kind of like flaky, chunky shadows. I do think Pixie Dust is a little bit brighter and more pretty. We will do comparisons for all these at the end. I don't know if I said that already, but I feel like that's the closest one that I have in my mind. And then for the Dingy Green, I'm not even gonna, no, maybe I will compare it. I have Willow here. I was gonna just dive right in and then I'm like, no, yeah, you're right. That's what I said. Willow, I feel like this is an appropriate type of upgrade. This one is the KVD one and this one is Willow. Did another Luxie comparison, but that's much too warm also. Much too warm. Much too warm. Actually, for this one, I'm wondering if I have a depotted Tarte shade that might work. This shadow. Okay, it's not spot on, but I do feel like it's the closest, so I'm just gonna go with this because we're at the point anyway of just having to like make an executive decision. And then the last one, this cool brown. I feel like I've had something like that before, unless I had and then I decluttered it because I didn't use it, but I'm feeling a little bit stumped. Who would have thought that of all the shades, this would be the one at the end that I'd be like, oh. I am gonna take out this Glaminatrix one for now. I'm still doing like a final little look through my palettes. I know this one's not the same, but I think it does look more similar in the pan, and if I can't have it look the same in the swatch, I'll take it looking similar in the pan. I'm gonna try out Sweetie Sunbeam from Divina, although I'm sure it's gonna be the same thing. Yeah, much too warm. And Thalassic? You know, Thalassic's an odd shadow because it does have a warmth to the base, but it has like greeniness in the sparkles. And I do quite like using it, and I do think it fits the vibe. Doing another swatch of the Glaminatrix. Yeah, I think I'm gonna choose, I'm sorry about the focusing today. This is out of hand. Okay. I'm going to choose Thalassic over the Glaminatrix shade because neither are perfect, but I think Thalassic fits better. By the way, I found my phone. It was on the chair that I'm sitting on. I wish I had a better way to lay this flat, but I think I'm just going to put it on top of this palette. It won't be magnetized in, but I would really rather that. Like, I was trying to think of how else to have it in here, and I feel like it would really take away from the look of the palette to not have it arranged similar. Like, there's enough differences already that I don't want to like complicate it further. So I'm just going to put the shadows in order on top of this black surface, which happens to be a palette. I don't know, I'm thinking it's kind of ugly. Let me know what you think. I'm very curious. I mean, it's not that much of a surprise that when it comes to palettes with like really intricate packaging, that the packaging might have a big effect on what you think about it. But like looking at these out of context, mismatched pans, no cute packaging, I'm like, this is a weird palette. This is a weird assortment. And also, I know I personally have an aversion to seeing certain like warm and cool colors together. For instance, bright orange and bright blue together, hate it. Hate it. And then like this gold with the red and the gold with the purple and the gold with the blue, hate it. This side I could almost get together more with because it is just like a little bit unique and they all share a certain like subtlety to them, like a certain like the volume on the color was cranked down a little bit. But this side I'm like, this looks like a basketball team, you know, like I feel like all of the color combinations that I mentioned are probably basketball jerseys. So I'm gonna swatch these out and I want to be able to have them like next to their Saint and Sinner palette counterparts, but there's 24 shades in here and I know I can't fit 48 shades on my arm. So I think I might do 12 and 12. Like I'll do the first 12 against the first 12 and then the second 12 against the second 12. Shine by SD Celestial, Adept ACD 11, Luxie Willow, Divina Thalassic, Divina Astrea, Depotted ColourPop Matte, Divina Triton, Cleona Opulent. Whoops. ColourPop Noche, Pretties for Your Face in for a Treat, Divina Cygnus, Divina Meraki. I'm actually pretty impressed with how similar these shadows are. Obviously, some are totally off, like this one at the end that I knew would be off, but I feel like that Divina shade really like saved the day there. And like this Adept purple is such like a similar tone. Like it's definitely way closer than I would have guessed it would be, but it's also just like not a combination of shadows that I would ever be thinking to put together. Actually, I will say I do like this Divina shadow with some more kind of like neutral adjacent grungy shades. Something about that contrast kind of speaks to me, but I'm not even sure how I would use that in like application, like how I would tie those shadows together in a real look. Okay, I'm gonna wipe these off and then we can start the next set of swatches. Luxie Pixie Dust, Depotted ColourPop Black, ColourPop Chic Happens, Menagerie Main. Luxie Mesa, Depotted Tarte, Menagerie Ink Defense, Depotted Sydney Grace. Menagerie Electric, Glaminatrix Burlesque, Divina Majesty, Menagerie Pack Leader. Okay, very interesting. This side looks so colorful. It's like a rainbow palette on this side, but I feel like the colors within the palette look kind of like dusty. So it doesn't feel like a half colorful, half ethereal, but swatched out, I think like it does give that vibe. Also, one other thing to note, when I was swatching the KVD side, the most intense point is right in the center where it compares, but because I'm like going top down for both, the most pigmented point of my shadows is the top. So I feel like there's some where like this one looks less intense, but that's just because like I lost some of the pigment by the time I got to the bottom of the swatch. I will say though, some of the mattes do swatch quite nicely. This black swatched nice, At the same time though, I don't use a lot of black eyeshadows, and if I did use one, I would want to be able to build it up, so like I'm totally okay with how the ColourPop one swatched. The mustard and the orange from the KB palette swatched beautifully. I'm surprised at how different Ink Defense looks from this. I guess like I could have considered that a little more before making my final decision, but I just assumed they would look the same, but like Ink Defense is looking so neutral. Very interesting though. I'm excited mostly to see how the two palettes compare on the eyes. So we're gonna switch over to my face and find that out. Okay, so I did end up reducing this into normal palette shape. I tried to keep the sides together so at least still represented that way, but I didn't want to like interact with it when it was just laying on a flat surface, because that's just like, it's destined for explosive consequences. I was looking through some old pictures that I have on my Instagram from when I first got the Saint & Sinner palette, and I used it so much. This was back in 2017. I realized that a lot of the looks I did were kind of exploring different color combinations. I did a lot of warm and cool looks at the same time. RIP to my tongue rings. So I think I will take inspiration from that, and I'm going to try to do a look that incorporates some warm colors and some cool colors. Or you know what? Because I'm trying to think, I want to stick with the shades that are most similar between the two palettes, because I am going to do one eye of each, and some of the cool colors don't look that similar. Like, my purple matte is a lot more pigmented. The, like, blue-brown pigment ones are very different. It's just, like, the deep blue and the deep green, and I don't know if I want to go that deep. So maybe I'll kind of do, like, warm colors and neutrals. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Let's get started. I'm gonna do my palette on this eye and the Saint & Sinner on this eye because I have them both on my lap, and that's the order they're in my lap, so I have a way to remember that. For the Saint & Sinner palette, in the crease, I'm gonna go in with Sacred Heart, that like light, weird, peachy one, and then Devil to intensify it a little bit. This first weird shade does pick up quite nicely. I should note too, I haven't used these on my eyes in probably years. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. It's not the usual type of shade that I would start my crease with, but it doesn't look bad. Yeah, if my indie shadows don't look exactly the same as this, I'm gonna be really surprised. Yeah, the color of this Divina shade is so similar, it's uncanny. It is a different formula though. The KVD one, or the Kat Von D, as we used to say in 2017, that one is more of like a satin, so it kind of like blends a little bit more silky, I want to say. I don't even know if that makes sense, but it doesn't behave exactly like a matte. That orange of mine might be a little bit brighter. But the same gist, I feel like these look equally as good, and actually the blend on the Kat Von D one might be a little bit better, which is a crazy thing to say. Then for both of them, I'm going to use the dark brown matte to deepen them up. So it's going to be Crucifix from the Kat Von D palette, and just try to get that right in that little outer edge. Yeah, I'm obviously not using a blending brush for this, but these are kind of like melting into each other in a way that I like. If I bought like a new indie palette and I started doing a look and it was like looking like this, I would have zero complaints. I don't think ever in the history of me like comparing an older palette, a not indie palette, to an indie palette, to my indie single shadows, have I felt like this. But probably the shimmers is where we're going to like divert. Interesting thing happening here. I often don't like blending a really deep color into lighter colors because I feel like the dark color can take over a little bit. So recently when I do that, I really try to like stay in one spot and just like fluff it around instead of like really going out with it. This one I think is a little lighter pigmented, so I think it did it a little bit better. But this one, I'm not seeing like a blend happening. And I don't want to move my brush too far away because I could see already that like wherever the brown is, it's just like the strongest thing you see. It's not like mixing with the orange as well. I mean, that's not bad. But it is a little bit of a different effect. Like these I feel like are a little bit more melded, and this one, you really see the steps of what I did here. And then this eye looks a lot darker because of that. From the dark brown, I'm going to go into Cathedral. And just try to take up like a little bit of the lid with this. I'm gonna add a little bit of black too, just like in the deepest crevice of this, because the black like leads into the gray a little bit better. I never work with black shadows, this is just me trying to make it work. Yeah, and then I'm gonna use a little bit more of the gray. Cool. Same thing on my indie side, using In For a Treat from Pretties For Your Face, and the ColourPop Depotted Black. I feel like it's looking a little bit messy out there. I think this looks a little bit more contained. And a little bit more gray. And then from the gray, I'm gonna go into the light, like silverish, almost lavender-ish sparkle, which in this palette is the shade Heaven. I think we're really going to see a big difference here. I'm gonna start with the brush, but I might try to go over with my finger. That looks very cute. I like that. For my single shadows, it's the shade Opulent. I think you can tell this one's more of like a piecey sparkle. They do look kind of different. I am going to go over them with my fingers and that will make both of them a little bit more opaque. Using this finger to kind of blend a little bit. And I'm actually going to reapply a little bit more of the gray here. So I might have gone a little bit too far with Opulent. Okay, cool. I'm going to just finish the whole look off camera. We will be right back. Here is the finished look. I like it. For my lower lash line, I used, for my single shadow side, I used a little bit more of that Divina Matte from the Fantasia palette, Astrea, and then I used Menagerie Pack Leader, and I feel like it looks really cool down there. I also had like a corresponding ColourPop eyeliner that I used on the waterline. And then on the KVD side, it was, you know, the equivalent KVD shadows. Oh, and then for the inner corner, I used Shine by SD and Glam Smitty Celestial and that like light shimmer from the Kat Von D palette for the Kat Von D side. I really feel like the Kat Von D palette held its own. I think the only major differences are like the two shimmers that I expect to be really shimmery in a look, the like main lid shadow and the inner corner. They're not that shimmery here, but the performance of like the mattes and the more satiny shadows was really lovely, and I feel like that's the only difference between these two eyes. The pigmentation is there, the blendability is there. I like it. I will say I don't feel like I learned any grand lessons from this experiment. I know other times I've done this, I've felt like, oh, I should give that brand another chance, or now I know to never give that brand a chance again, or I find out something about like color combinations, or I don't know what, but I feel like Kat Von D from 2017, like the brand Kat Von D that released this palette nearly 7 years ago, it'll be 7 years in the fall, it's not the same brand anymore. And I also know that I tried one of their more recent palettes in December. It was like the Planet Fanatic palette or Planet Fantastic, I don't remember. It was on a really big sale at Sephora. I have a whole video where I tried that out, and I was impressed with the shimmers actually, but the mattes I was really unimpressed with, and I ended up returning that palette because I was still within the return policy. So yeah, I feel like there's very few things that the old brand has in common with the new brand. I guess their ethos are the same. It's still like a vegan and cruelty-free brand, which is, you know, obviously very important to me. But I feel like at this time they were going for bold, like iconic packaging. They were creating like highly pigmented shadows in colors that weren't easily accessible other places. And I feel like the brand nowadays, for the most part, is more like following trends, like a lot of brands are. Like they had something to rebel against then, and that made them special. And I feel like all those things that made them kind of rebellious are gone. And I'm happy about some of them. I'm happy that the person, Kat Von D, isn't associated with them anymore because I don't think she's a very good person. But I wish they kept that, like, cool, like, gothic inspired. This is even like religion inspired. Like, that's kind of an edgy thing to do, you know? I'm sure there's people out there that thought this was sacrilegious and like that's what they were going for. And I feel like the brand now wouldn't want to like step on the toes, you know? I also don't think this means I'm gonna like pull this out and start using it again. But this was a lot of fun to do, and I mean, I could pull this out. Like, I learned from doing this look that, like, if I were to pull this out again, I would likely be pleased with the results. But I also learned that I don't really need to pull it out because I have shadows in my collection that can do the same exact thing, and I even have the colors in my collection that I thought were unique to this palette. I'm gonna wrap this up here though. I feel like this has probably been a long one. I think I've been filming for like a quarter of my life at this point. If you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Let me know if you want to see other videos like this. I still have other like nostalgic palettes. I did like a nostalgic palette collection at the end of last year, and I would like to make some more similar content to this one using other palettes. So let me know if you enjoyed this. I also have a Patreon where I'm doing some random palette selections and some looks with those random palettes. I'll have that linked down below. And I also have a fashion channel that I'll have linked down below. Thank you for spending your time with me today though, and have a great day. Bye!